Hey folks, and welcome to Greg's Golf Shack. Who isn't talking about indoor golf? I mean, simulator golf is on the rise. We had all kinds of cool products released at the 2025 PGA show. The TGL is really fun to watch, the Professional Indoor Golf League, and we see a big growing of indoor golf communities participating in tournaments, events, creating leagues where they're just playing online golf from the comfort of their own home. And this is leading to a lot more people, even a lot of average golfers, to consider what it might take to put a simulator in their home. There's a lot of different options out there, and there's a lot more budget-friendly decisions that we can make. So I want to go over some of the top 5 considerations that you should think about before buying or building your own golf simulator. Now, this isn't about advertising specific brands. I don't want to compare if some are better than others because it's really specific to our individual needs and our budgets. So I just want to give a general overview of things to consider so you can make better decisions on what you might want to purchase. Now, before we get deep into it, I'd appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. I love making these kind of videos and I'm going to keep making them, but I'd love to see some of your love and support. Like it, leave me some comments, share it. I'm a certified instructor with the Canadian Golf Teachers Federation. I just want to help you improve your game and have more fun on the course and indoors. Consideration number 1, space. Now this one can seem a little obvious, but do you have enough space to swing the club comfortably, to swing it safely, and also not feel claustrophobic? We don't want to have just enough space or barely enough space because that can cause us to manipulate our swing to try to fit within that area, and that doesn't help us improve our golf game. Plus, if you have too tight of a space, you could risk damaging your clubs, damaging the walls, or even cause injury if a ball starts bouncing all over the place. So space is your first and most important consideration. So let's consider ceiling height. I recommend at least 9 feet clear. Now, you might see different recommendations from different systems, but we really need to accommodate our different swings. And most people will usually estimate ceiling height using their driver because it's the longest club. But the driver is actually more of a flatter swing because of its length. What we need to consider is clubs like our wedges, which even if we're trying to hit a higher shot or something, that can be a lot more vertical and can hit that ceiling. So we want to make sure we have enough space clear. That means if there's any lights, any fans hanging down, they're not going to come into contact. I'm about 6 foot tall with the mat up about an inch or so, a little bit more. If I have my wedge up vertical hitting a high shot, that's another 3 feet up in the air. That's 9 feet just hitting a regular high wedge. And if there's anything up there, that could be a concern. And it's not always just about, your normal swing. You might want to be working on your swing and doing practice drills, nice one-handed. You can see that gets up a little high with the driver. So we want to make sure we have enough space. Err on the side of more space rather than thinking, I have just enough. So what about the width of our space? This is where we might want to take the driver swing into consideration because it's the longest club and the flattest swing plane of all our clubs. Also, we have to think about our regular swing routine. If you generally include some practice swings in your routine, you're going to need a little extra space for that. We don't want to be taking a practice swing and put our club through a wall. And generally, we need to stand back a bit with the practice swing because we don't want the simulator to pick it up. And what if you're not the only one you're having in your space? If you are having friends over and entertaining with some golf evenings, you might have people that are a lot taller, have a lot longer swing than you. What if you have a mixture of lefty and righty golfers over? Now you need to almost double that width to accommodate golfers with different swings. We also need enough depth, not only to accommodate the swings with our longest clubs, but most simulators will need time to read what the ball is doing, what the club is doing, all that kind of stuff. We also need a safe amount of distance to make contact with that ball and have it travel to whatever surface we're going to be hitting it into. There needs to be some time there so the ball doesn't bounce back right away and hit the club a second time, hit a person. And like I said, those systems need time to read the data that's coming off that ball. Not only that, some systems you might use could be behind the player, a rear-mounted system. Those also need to be placed back sometimes 8, maybe even 10 feet behind the player. So you could need a good 8 to 10 feet to your impact screen and another 8 to 10 feet or so back to your device if it's a rear position device. The depth of our space is an important factor to be able to swing smoothly, swing comfortably, and get the most out of your sim. Finally, as it relates to the space where your simulator is going to exist, you want to make sure you have enough room for all the other peripherals. Your system might need a computer to run. You might need some TVs. You might need a projector. Is it going to be a short throw or a long throw projector, depending on your budget and what you might have available? You need room behind the screen or the net for there to be some flexion so that ball doesn't hit a wall. So that's going to eliminate maybe a foot of your space as well. Do you have sufficient power in your space that can run the different devices you might have? You might need to run some wiring around to be able to hook these things up. So these are considerations to do your research on the type of system that you want to find out what else do I need to accommodate it in the space. Consideration number 2. Do you use an impact screen or a net? So do we want the immersive experience of an impact screen using a projector or just setting up a net and looking at a laptop or an iPad? That's up to you, and that can depend on our budgets and the type of systems that we want to use. Personally, I like the immersive experience of using an impact screen and a projector. It helps me feel like I'm out on the course and I'm looking down a target line that is representative of the real thing. But if you're building your golf simulator over time, like a do-it-yourself project, maybe you want to start off with a good net, maybe something that's about 7 feet high by 10 feet wide and has sort of an enclosure built in, because that's something you won't lose money on. You can always use it out in the yard. You could sell it if you decide to upgrade your studio later. Now, whatever kind of system you want to put, you'll want to make sure there's a safety enclosure. Just hanging a sheet up on the wall won't protect you from errant shots off to the side or ones that go high. This is a do-it-yourself system that I made. If anyone's interested in that, let me know in the comments and I'll post a video of how I built my system. But I've got some nice nets over here that can help catch some balls that go left or right. And I've got some styrofoam insulation up on the ceiling there to help deflect any kind of balls that might be flying up and avoid hitting the hard surface. Now, I'm a pretty decent golfer. I haven't had too many errant shots, but we all hit some bad golf shots. I've got a lot of dents up there in that foam from clients I've had over who are skying tee shots. I've got some dents over in the walls from just an errant ball flying around. So we do need to be careful and make sure we have these systems in place. You can buy packages that include full enclosures, or you can build your own, but it is a consideration. What's going to keep your ball from going under the net and hitting a wall, or left or right, or how are you going to prevent the ball from going up into the ceiling? We don't want those bounce backs coming back and damaging our equipment or causing injury. Now, before we specifically talk about simulator hardware, since we're talking about impact screens, I also want to touch on projectors. There are so many different kinds, and the amount of space you have, as I mentioned, can determine what kind of projector you might need. I would suggest you do want one that will have at least a vertical keystone. This allows you, whether you're placing it on the floor or up on the ceiling, that'll allow you to shape the picture to match your image. If you don't have a lot of room and you have to put the projector off to the side, you want to make sure it'll have a horizontal keystone to help shape it onto the screen effectively. But one thing I want to touch on is the level of quality. Now, I think it's great no matter what you want to do or what your budget is, but sometimes I think people can get a little intimidated or think they need to deck out the equipment to the most highest quality. They need 4K, 8K, they need really high resolution, all these kind of things. And I don't necessarily think that's a necessity. Any kind of hardware you get, like computers, might be 4K by default these days, but that can get a little expensive when you're buying a projector. And honestly, when we think about the impact screen, that is a surface that we are going to be hitting tens of thousands of golf balls into. It's going to get scuffed. It's going to get marked. It's going to have wrinkles in it and gain damage over time. So if you're doubling this as a really high-end home theater, it's not really going to deliver the same thing as a high-end TV in your living room. It can be fun and everything, but you might get just as good of an experience if you just use it like a 1080p and you don't need to go the full distance of 4K and spend extra thousands of dollars potentially. For me, I really appreciate the high level of detail and quality and resolution. I mean, I teach art and design for video game and simulation development, so we focus on those things. But even though my computer is 4K, my projector is only 1080p. I actually have my system marked down to about a 1600 by 1200 resolution to fit my square screen, and I love it. I wouldn't really notice if I had a 4K or the resolution I'm using. By the time you start hitting balls and you're playing and you're having fun, we underestimate the power of immersion. We get sucked into it and we convince ourselves that what we're seeing is a great experience. So don't feel like you have to go all out on all the high-end equipment. The higher end equipment we need, the higher end adjacent equipment we need to support it. So if you have a really powerful projector, you probably need a really powerful computer to get the most out of it. So budget yourself, nicely and figure out what is best for you. Don't underestimate that power of immersion and don't feel like you have to break the bank. Consideration number 3, let's talk about hardware. Now, the hardware we can use, there is a variety of different models out there, and it's not always what is the most popular and the best, which could be the most expensive or maybe not. We don't want to get wrapped up in that. We want to figure out what is best for you and your needs. So if you're lacking something like a lot of depth and a lot of height, then maybe a side-mounted device, a little floor model there, like the SkyTrack or the Unicore iMini or the Foresight GC Quad. There are a lot of different alternatives of a system that can just sit beside you and will read that data and give you that good experience. The one drawback with these front-facing or side-positioned units is they're not really accommodating of left and right players in a simultaneous round. So usually you'll have to reset that device for somebody who's a left-hander, bring it back again for a right-hander. It's not very convenient if you're just trying to have a fun round. Now, if you do have a lot of depth, as I mentioned earlier, there are rear position units like the Garmin R10 or the Mevo Plus, and those just sit back behind you. It could be 6, 8, 10 feet behind you. That will read the data into your impact area. The benefit of those is they can better support left and right-handed players, but it's all about what is best for you. Now, you'll often find that those floor position units, the ones to the side, the ones behind, are usually a little bit more affordable than some of the ceiling mounted devices that we're going to talk about, but they still range in price and range in the kind of data they provide. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, if you have the space available, there are the ceiling mounted devices. These are usually a little bit more higher end. We're talking about the Unicore IXO, TrackMan devices, and there's one that's challenging the price points a little bit, bringing it down, the Pro TV-X. I have a feeling that one's going to be pretty popular. And these systems just sit up above you. They provide a generous impact zone to help facilitate left and right-handed players. And as I said, these are usually a bit higher end and can produce a lot more data. They can see a lot more about what the club and the ball and those things are doing. Some of these get a little bit pricier. Now, depending on the type of launch monitor or simulator that you're interested in, you'll want to check to see if there's any additional peripheral expenses. Does it need a robust computer to run? Do you need a tablet? Do you need little cameras or a projector? Does the software that it comes with or doesn't come with, does it need certain requirements of your computer? Some of these additional expenses might not be included in the purchase package. So research the different systems and see exactly what is going to be required on your end. Now, another thing we want to touch on when it comes to the hardware as we lead up to talking about software is the kind of data that it provides. Each of these systems might have some sort of radar technology or different cameras, all this kind of stuff that can produce different sorts of data. But the most primary information that just about all of these units will read is ball data. This is how fast is the ball going, what direction is it launching in, and how much spin in the spin direction of that ball. Almost all of these types of units will read that first, and a lot of these different units will even estimate club data based on what the ball is doing. So depending on our interests, we might not necessarily need all the bells and whistles of every kind of club data and ball data that could be provided down to the, 10th of a degree or 100th of a degree. For a lot of us golfers, that information might be irrelevant. The most important thing that we can get from these units is ball flight, seeing what the ball is doing. From there, we can educate ourselves within 5 minutes, do a little Google search and find out how does the club path and club face affect ball flight. And we'll be able to find out just by seeing where our ball goes, just like on a real driving range, we can surmise what we're doing with the club. So do we really need to spend thousands of dollars more for that little picture or something to tell us what the club is doing? Some of us might find that really beneficial, especially if you're a club fitter or if you're an instructor, but even instructors know what the club is doing to produce a certain ball flight. So this is where the data that's provided might be suitable for you, or you might be going over the top. All depends on your budget. But if you're considering a unit that only processes ball data, you should be just fine with that and get a lot out of it. And you can save a lot of money. Me personally, I'm currently using a unit that only processes ball data, and I get a lot out of it. My students are very happy with the results that they get out of their lessons. I will likely upgrade. I'm attracted to a lot of the extra data, and we'll see, but is it necessarily needed? Do I need to break the bank right now just to see that information? Not really, but it's nice to have. Consideration 4. What about software? All right, the software is an important consideration. Is the software actually included with the package, or is it going to be another annual subscription? Most of these devices, after the initial purchase, will have a subscription to be able to continue using it and get some basic data. And some of them might have practice ranges, virtual practice ranges. They might have some cool practice areas for different kinds of shot shaping or games or challenges or things. And some of them might even provide some course play. It might be 10, 20, maybe 30 courses, but it's usually different tiers of subscriptions on top of your initial purchase. So have a look at the different systems to find out what might be suitable and what else is included or not included. And there's a good chance you'll probably want to go beyond the base software and consider some of the third-party softwares, things like GS Pro, TGC 2019, E6. These are all kinds of different software that provide thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of different courses to play, but there's also a lot of those online communities and leagues that I was talking about to help just sort of join you into the fun of this growing community of online golfers. Many of those third-party softwares are also an annual subscription. Some of them might have a perpetual one-time purchase that you can make, but you're going to want to research and see what best fits you and how much you're willing to invest. Do you want to spend a lot of money on the base subscription if you can get more out of a third party, or the other way around? These are considerations that you might not be expecting as an additional expense when you're considering getting a simulator. So have a look at the different software and see what fits you best. Now, one of the best things I can recommend about the software is not only software that shows you the ball flight that I was talking about, and there's a lot that can do that. SkyTrack does that, TGC19 does that, as I mentioned, GS Pro does that. They all really do that, especially if you're having this course play. And I would really recommend that you do invest in some sort of expansive course play software. Many of us might be happy with just a virtual driving range to work on our swing, but practicing on a driving range doesn't really teach us the important values of good course management. Playing on a course can do that. I play a lot on these different simulator courses, and I'll play a lot of mulligan golf just to practice. I'll hit some shots, I'll hit a couple of mulligans and try to shape it a different way or correct something that's going wrong and then move on to the next shot. I'm not somebody who likes to hit 100 wedges to try and figure something out. So that's also where all these communities are having fun and taking place. There's always new courses usually being updated on many of these software. So it's a pretty active community. And I think it's a great way to practice and have fun. If you're going to host some events over at your place, play golf. If you are in a northern community like I am, where we get snow like 8 months of the year, playing golf indoors is a lifesaver. So choosing the right software to make sure not only you can improve your game, get the most out of your hardware, but also have some fun is important, and you want to consider that extra expense. Consideration number 5, our impact area and stance mat. Now, this is probably more important than you think. And I often laugh when I see people online, they're posting videos of them hitting shots and they're in their garage or on their driveway, standing on the concrete, and they've got a little mat that's like this big and it might sit an inch or an inch and a half up off the ground, and they're hitting shots. So not only is the elevation off, where that's not doing them any favors for their swing, that mat also goes flying as they hit the ball. So you're not getting that club, ball, ground, turf interaction kind of thing. And also, if you're using a device, who knows how that's going to read a flying piece of turf. So we want something that is professional, is durable, and is fitted like solid in there, not going to be moving around. Now, personally, I like using a 5x5 hitting mat because I can rotate it. It's a square, I can rotate it around as different areas, the twisting and turning of my shoes and impact of the club, it starts to wear down over time, which will happen. So I can keep turning it and get more use out of it. I've actually gone a little bit further, and I got another mat that was a 3x5, and I've cut it into 1-foot strips for my impact zone. As that wears down, I can flip it around and just get a little bit more use out of it. Now, a lot of these ones that are durable, this isn't something you want to be cheap about. You do want to spend the money on a good impact mat. This 5x5 that I had is really durable. It could go out onto a driving range and last multiple seasons with people who come out and spend a half hour at a time or something hitting off this mat. But it's not really the best thing for indoor golf at home. If you're coming out almost every day hitting shots, the stiffer kind of durable feel can have an impact on our forearms. A lot of people will start developing tennis elbow or golfer's elbow from just that repeated impact over and over again. So that doesn't mean that it isn't a good mat. It's durable, it's great, but we might want a softer consideration for our impact area. And that's why I might hit some practice shots off this main square turf, but I don't really play off it. These are both the same height, both turfs. They're at least an inch high. You want at least a half inch of padding, maybe a little bit more, and another 3/8 or a half inch of turf on top. You want to make sure that there is some impact room there. You can get cheap ones that are pretty thin. I've got them off Amazon before. They've been pretty cheap, and it hasn't been long before I've dug a hole in it, or it's been painted so green or dyed green or whatever it is that that green color actually transferred the ball and stained my screen. So we don't want to be too cheap, as I mentioned. So even though these are two different surfaces, the one I'm hitting off is actually quite a bit softer than the one I'm standing on. And that has a big impact on, the health of my forearms. I was getting some of that golfer's elbow, tennis elbow hitting off this tough turf. As soon as I switch to this softer one, no trouble at all, and I can come out here every day. Now, it depends on the kind of other flooring that you have around here, but I just use 2-stick carpet tape underneath this, and that keeps it solid. Doesn't move anywhere. I can peel it up off this AstroTurf over there if I need to, no problem. Stick it back down. I often have to move my stance mats around, whether I have a left-handed or a right-handed student in here, and I have no trouble doing that. These don't budge at all. So I recommend you don't take a shortcut when it comes to the stance mat in the impact zone. This is something you want to spend enough money to make sure you get a lot of usage out of it, good longevity, it lasts a long time, and also something that your forearms will thank you for. And one final bonus piece of advice for you folks who do take the plunge and get a home golf simulator: prepare to have your ego checked. Many of us hit the ball a lot shorter than we actually think. And data, actual accurate data, is going to give you a bit of a wake-up call. But just realize that is all very important. Knowing your actual numbers, your actual distances is going to help you out on the golf course. But don't necessarily get worried and wrapped up right away thinking, my golf simulator's broken, I'm not getting accurate data. You probably are. You just have to adjust your thinking a bit. And folks, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a lot more general information of the steps forward that you can take to make a better purchase that fits within your needs, within your budget, and have a good time. So please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Greg's Golf Shack.